All right, man. So we got some absolutely huge news coming out of the Senate here. We have a new Senate poll in the state of Texas. There was also a general election poll that dropped that showed that Kamala has effectively halved the lead that Trump had over Biden, it going down from 9 points all the way down to 5 from YouGov's poll. So this poll is pretty crazy too. So it's a Senate poll, has Cruz at 47% and Colin Allred at 45%, which is a 2-point lead for Ted Cruz. This is a YouGov poll. It's a B-rated pollster, 1635 likely voters, and is dated 8/16. So this is absolutely massive. This is only 2 points, which is insanely close. First of all, Ted Cruz is absolutely horrible. Basically, everybody hates him as well. But what's really crazy about this is it's actually possible to get a triple whammy. So it's actually possible for the Democrats to get the Senate, the House, and the presidency. So now this actually opens up a third possible pathway here. The first one we were talking about was, hey, well, if we just if we hold John Tester's seat in the state of Montana, we have a 50-50 Senate, where we have 2 independents who caucus with Democrats. So you have a majority because Tim Walz is a tiebreaker. The other pathway would be if MT goes red, you have Nebraska with Osborne go blue. Osborne is an independent. You would have to pray to God that he decides to caucus with you. I think him deciding not to caucus with any party would cause a really big constitutional crisis potentially, or a Senate rules crisis, maybe not constitutional one. But this gives us the third potential strategy, which is where you pick up Texas. So this gives us a third pathway to victory, kind of fitting, I feel like, for our situation, because Kamala's also not in a situation where she's destroying anybody. It's just kind of like a one state kind of thing, or a many pathway kind of thing. So this is absolutely huge news for us, absolutely huge. And then if we take a look here at the Senate polls, we can take a look at these Senate polls here. So in the double D's, DDHQ aggregator for Texas Senate polls, says Texas Senate polls, Cruz versus Allred. Cruz has a 3.4% lead based on 19 polls. So Cruz, 47.7%. Allred, 44.3%. Allred looks like a thumb. Also, the only thing that's kind of sus is you have a Democrat running whose name is Allred. That's kind of it shouldn't be all blue. That's kind of sus. But he looks like a thumb, and then Ted Cruz looking like a goddamn, I don't know, razorfish shark or something. But what you can see here is Allred is surging right here. Cruz is also going up in the numbers as well, but Allred is obviously going to surge from these numbers just by the two-party system. He's a Democrat, so he's going to get in the 45, somewhere around there. And so he's already at 44.3. I think the biggest thing here to see is that the support for Cruz is actually muted. So what I would say from my analysis for this race, it looks like in general, in these states here, you really need to, in the state of Texas, you need to eat from the Republican. You can't just boost your numbers. Like Biden, I think in Pennsylvania, I think it was 50 to 48.8. So he was able to win with just barely 50. A lot of the times, the Republicans in Texas are going to have over 50 like Trump got in 2020. So you're going to have to take from them. You can't just stem your numbers. You have to focus on, okay, how do I eat from them as well? But this support being only at 47.7 is huge, because then you could just focus on upping your own numbers. And so this was the Senate election results back in 2018. I always like to look back at these old numbers. Beto O'Rourke only lost by 2.6 percentage points. And he actually did better than in a lot of the areas than Biden did. Likely maybe because Biden was pretty weak in Texas, and then Cruz was also likely a weak person. But he got 50.9%. So when he's getting a majority, you need to eat from him. You can't just beat him out, you can't just beat him off. You have to take away from him, right? So the question is he kind of weak enough now to where he's not going to get 50%, or maybe barely 50% or something like that? That kind of becomes the question here. But to take a little bit of a blast from the past, 2018 Texas Senate, Cruz versus O'Rourke. We have this in the RCP average. The only aggregator I was actually able to find with the numbers. But the final results were Cruz plus 2.6, but the RCP average was plus 6.8 between October 22nd and November 5th, which is huge. So basically, in the last 2 weeks of the election, the average was plus 6.8. They severely underestimated Beto O'Rourke, and then they ended up slightly overestimating Cruz. So there isn't too much evidence, at least in the past, for the Texas numbers for 2020 and 2018. I don't know about 2022, but 2018 and 2020 of underperformance of Cruz. So I think the key would be if Cruz is able to get beneath 50% in the averages, I think you really have a really solid chance to win. But you can see here, the polls severely underestimated Beto O'Rourke. So I would expect Allred is going to be able to get somewhere around the 47, 48 marker. But in order to win, you would need to kind of get into a point where you're getting close to that 50%. Maybe you barely get 50%, or maybe there's, some kind of not adding up to, 100 where you're still able to get the dub. So I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle for sure, but I think if Cruz is able to have less support where he's not getting in the 50s, I think that would be really, really helpful. And so here we have the Allred favorability rating, so the net favorability. So it has Colin Allred at 11 is positive favorability. Greg Abbott is 9. Dan Patrick is 8. Ted Cruz is just 1. Biden is minus 13, which is funny. Kamala's minus 3. Tim Walz is plus 1. Shout out Tim Walz. So here what we can see is Colin Allred also having a really good favorability rating, which is really, really helpful. Super, super helpful here. So it's going to be super interesting. It's really going to come down to it. If right now, it's 47.7 to 44.3. So if Cruz can kind of stay at these numbers in the polls, I think it would be nice. But if he's polling at 51, it's going to be like really close to impossible to beat him. But if he's polling beneath 50, I think you might actually be able to have a chance. So this opens up a whole new potential pathway towards winning, and we can kind of look at these Cruz polls. So they have +3, +4 for these ones, +3, +3. So it's looking pretty good for a lot of these polls, and hopefully that's indicative that Cruz is really weak. But if he continues to poll in the upper 40s, like 47s, 46s, he's really, really weak. But we have a lot of pathways to victory. Colin Allred, boosting up right now, so hopefully he'll be able to, win the election. It'd be really, really massive. But yeah, definitely pretty crazy news.